So we're gonna look at shadow boxing. Okay, so shadow boxing is really really fun. So shadow boxing is a process where we can use for coaching as well, where we can break down certain components of the coaching slides to really get better at it. So we're going to show you a demonstration of this, and I'm going to post this up, segment this up, to share this with people and our friends on YouTube as well, because this is going to be really, really powerful process. So the first step you're going to do is to establish first which competency do you want to practice and which slides you're going to practice. So suppose we're going to look and focus on the competency of maintains agreements, which is competency number 3, right? Establishes and maintains agreements, which is two parts. So establishing and maintaining. So the maintaining process happens throughout the entire conversation. So for that part, it's kind of it's going to be an entire process. It's going to be an entire journey of the whole conversation. So we're going to do the first part, which is establishing the coaching agreement. So by doing that, we're going to do a shadow boxing of that first part. Okay, you guys ready for it? Okay, so if you're watching this, take out a pen and paper and do this with me. Okay, and this is very very important. Okay, so shadow boxing time. So we're going to put first, which is your core competency, number 3, on establish and maintains agreements. Okay, now what we're going to do first, this is a very good practice for you. So you may not be you may not be coaching someone physically, but you may actually be doing that with a peer or with a partner or with yourself. So this is how you can do it. Okay, so very first step is to establish a topic at hand. Okay, whichever topic that you may have. Okay, so suppose you have a topic and you say that, okay, that's the topic that you are really looking for. Let's say we choose a topic about losing weight. Okay, so let's choose an arbitrary topic. Now let's try to establish an agreement with ourselves. So we will start with as the coach and as the client, like this. Okay, and we practice. So what do you think the coach is going to say? What do you think the coach is going to say?
Why is it important for you to lose weight?
Okay, why is it?
Oh, but we are right now in the establishing the coaching agreement, right? So that would not be the right question at this stage.
Yes. So as a coach, you're going to ask the first question, which is even before talking about losing weight. What do you think is the first thing you're going to ask?
What would you like to talk about today?
Yep, good afternoon. Okay, so the client.
What would you like to work through today?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Client. Okay, Mr. Client, what would you like to work on today? Okay, so great. We have the first opening statement. So very nice. Now the client, what do you expect them to say to you? What do you expect them to say to you?
I'd like to work on how I can start losing weight.
Okay, I would like to work on how to start losing weight. Okay, so good. Now you have the client. Now the coach, how would you respond to this if your client says that to you?
Why is losing weight important for you?
Okay, so you might say, why is losing weight important for you? Okay, and what do you think the client would say?
If I were to, let's say if I don't ask them why, but I ask them, what do you mean by losing weight?
Okay, so very nice. Now you have an alternate question. So this is the beauty about what we call shadow boxing coaching. Okay, what does it mean to you? What does losing weight mean to you? Okay, so now this is where it's really good, because what you're doing here in this process, you ask the question, why is losing weight important for you? Then you take a pause and you ask yourself, am I going too fast? Am I bringing the client down too fast without first getting some insights about that? And now we say, hey, actually it does sound like a little bit too fast. It's like only the first sentence and I'm asking the client why, right? So before we even get to why, we need to first understand what is it the client wants. So that's going to be important before getting to the why. So remember the 3 different circles we talk about. the what, the why, and then the who. So we, although we will get to the why, but the why at this point of time might be too early. So that's the beauty of shadow boxing. Okay, so we say that now, okay, it looks like I'm just going down too fast. It's just way too fast for me. Okay, way too fast for me. And so what can we do here? What do you think can do? What do you think can do here?
Well, you can either
Can you,
choose one or do both.
Okay, you can choose one or do both. Okay, so which one would you guys like to approach?
What does
can
losing weight mean?
establishing
What does
what
losing
mean
weight
to you
mean to
first?
you?
Okay, yeah. So maybe as we take a pause and we say, hey, actually, what does losing weight actually sounds like a better way to approach than to ask the why. Okay, it does sound that way. So, what does losing weight mean to you? Okay, so what do you think the client will say to you?
I think this is where the client will start opening up and tell you a little bit about the history, why this is
Mhm.
important to them,
Okay,
and then what do they mean by losing weight.
okay. So now I want you to take on the associated state as a client. So we're going to switch different perceptual position. Now you're going to be the client. Okay, so assuming that now you are the client, how would you respond to the coach as if you're the client?
I want to lose weight because I want to get better health.
I want to lose weight because I want to get better health. Okay. Okay. So good. Now this is actually who said that?
Me,
Oh,
Sharifah.
Sharifa. Okay, very, very nice. Because Sharifa is actually doing what we call an associated state. This is very important in shadow boxing coaching. Okay, when we're doing shadow boxing coaching, when we're practicing by ourselves, you need to get in association as you're switching between the client role and the coach role. This is one of the important criteria. So you can feel what the client is saying. It's not, oh, she wants to lose weight or he wants to lose weight. It's, I want to lose weight. So the language of association. If you guys missed out the video, I actually did a video on YouTube called "The Association and Dissociative Language." Do you guys get a chance to watch that? No, nobody watched that. Oh, so sad. Okay, you need to watch those videos. Okay, every week I come to you with at least one or more or three, four videos on YouTube. So I'll post it down in the chat box function here. It's called dissociative and associative language, and this is very important, especially for those of you who are involved in cognitive behavioral coaching, dialectic coaching conversations as well. Some of you in NLP, or some of you are actually doing coaching therapy work or coaching consulting work. This is very important. Okay, the language of association and language of dissociation is very key. And some of you are doing counseling, or maybe you're doing psychology or psychotherapy. This is also going to be really useful for you. Okay, so now we're in association. Now we're going to dissociate ourselves from the client, and we're going to associate ourselves back to the coach. How would you respond as a coach?
maybe what's the definition of better health is to you, as in to the client?
What is
What?
better health to you? Okay, what do the rest of us think?
As in what's the definition of better health?
So you're asking what is the definition? Okay, what is the definition? Okay, so now we have two alternate questions we can ask again. Very good. So that's when we take a pause and ask ourselves, okay, which would be a better question to ask, or which would be a better observation to follow on? Would it be what is better health to you, or would it be what is the definition of better health?
I would go with how do you define better health?
Okay, so now we have a third one. How
Jedi?
would you define better health?
Or perhaps, Jedi, we could ask them if they have any health concerns currently.
Have any health concerns currently? Yes, someone was.
I may ask
Yes.
like, what else is losing weight mean to you?
What what else is losing weight mean to you? Okay, anyone else?
Can I ask how losing weight defines to get a better health?
How losing weight defines better health? Okay, good. Anyone else? No? No one else? Okay, so we have option A, we have option B. Very nice. This is actually really good. We have option C, we have option D, we have option E, and we have option F. Okay, so in the comment section below here, type down which one would you go for. Which one would you go for? Okay, so Hazelman says F, looking for the connection between two. Fiona says C. Tapan says A. Cindy says A. Sharifa says F. Ayu says C. Okay. Interesting, nobody says B. Nobody says B, nobody said E. Nobody said E. Okay, very interesting. Now, a lot of us say A, and a number of us say C, and a number of us say F. So now let's take a look at A, C, F. Okay, A, C, F, and look at them. Okay, so let's take a look at A first. What is better health to you? Now, does this follow well when the client says a statement like this? I want to lose weight because I want to get better health. So does this follow nicely in the conversational flow? Well, it does sound like this can follow nicely. So maybe we just put a plus there. What about C? How would you define better health? Well, it does sound like that as well. How about F? How losing weight defines better health? Well, it also does sound like that. And Smita says, E, what else does losing weight mean to you? Well, it does sound like that. Okay. Now, so what we've now found is that, okay, it does sound like this. In fact, all of them does sound like that. Now, then we ask ourselves, how then do we know which is a better approach in the questioning process? Not the questions of itself, in the questioning process. Yeah. So we ask ourselves then, okay, what is the client actually trying to tell me here? So this is how, as a coach, you have your internal dialogue, right? You can ask yourself, what is the client trying to tell me? What is the client trying to say to me?
I think where the client is going is they start off with telling you about that they want to lose weight, but you see very quickly that it's not losing weight that's the issue here.
Yeah.
The issue is to get better health. So so I think if you kind of use that opportunity to delve a little bit deeper, you realize that the initial at least reason for the conversation is actually not the actual reason for the conversation.
Okay, so there is a deeper reason. Okay, so this is an example for some of us who might be familiar with the behavioral sciences or cognitive sciences. We begin to realize there's something what we call a cognitive dissonance or a cognitive flow process here, or a cognitive behavioral flow here. So, for example, I want to lose weight because I want to have better health. What follows naturally after this? What follows naturally after this? So this is where I'm teaching all of us to become better questioners in the questioning process. So that's the big difference. So someone asked me before, Jedi, what's the difference between a ACC level coach, a PCC level coach, an MCC level coach, and an MCC and beyond level coach? Well, the big difference is precision. So if we look at all this, A to F, in fact, all of this can be questions that you can ask. But the difference it's where the questions will lead the client. What is the intention of the question? and what's the position of thought. So this is all really important. Yep. Yes. Who?
Yeah, Jedi, it's
Yes.
Smita here. Yeah. Can you just describe, like, is it losing weight or having better health? What is really you're looking forward?
Is it losing weight or is it better health? Is it what you're looking for? Okay. So let's.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think if you kind of go too fast into better health as well, you're kind of pigeonholing the client as well. So you're giving them that direction. I don't know. It's a bit too early in the conversation for us to assume that that's where the client wants to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Zaman as well.
Very nice. So now what we begin to see here, now with this shadow boxing, you begin to unveil what is the presupposition in your questioning. The presupposition of question G, you presuppose that the client wants to either wants better health or wants to lose weight, or there's some this or that, right? So that's the presupposition here. So there's an imposition of thought, right, on the client, or of thought on the client. Now let's take a look at each one of them and see what all these things mean. Okay, so how is losing weight defines how losing weight defines better health. Now this is what we call the hastening the cognitive process. Okay, so how losing weight defines better health? That's you're hastening the process. The client has not yet clicked. It's too fast or too early. Sometimes I call this premature questioning. Okay, so when you ask the questions prematurely, you may not get the depth of the conversation, or you may not allow the client to create the connection or the neural connections within them. What else does losing weight mean to you? This is an example of a surfacial questioning. Okay, you're just asking. There's nothing wrong in all these questions. It's just the approach to the question. So you're just asking for surfacial questioning. Okay, surfacial. Now, what do you have any health concerns currently? This is a diagnostic question. Okay, so this is probably a leading question. Do you have any health concerns? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. Then how would you define better health? This is still very much on the surface, but an expanded surface. So you're just talking about a surface issue, but just expanding it. Okay, so this is an example of questions that might not produce a good outcome in a conversation, or you might actually drag the conversation from 30 minutes to a 45 or 60 minutes. That's why conversations can be very, very long. Okay, now, even this as well, what is the definition of better health? What is the definition of better health? It's just also another surface expanded question. Okay, and when we look at this one here, what is better health to you? Also another example of surface expanded.
What does it mean by that? Surface expanded?
What it means that I'm just expanding whatever the client have just stated here. It's not forwarding the conversation. It's just expanding what does better health means, what does lose weight means, what does it mean by you want to get, does it mean that you have not gotten already? So that's basically still at the very surface layer structure, and you're just expanding on that. Yeah. Okay, so many of these questions like this. Now, I'm helping you guys to see what's the connection here, or the neural connection here. So Hazelman pointed out that there is a deeper reason based on just these two sentences here. I would like to work on how to start losing weight. So that's very, very interesting here. How to. Another word is start. Another word is losing weight. So there's three component here. Component 1, component 2, and component 3.
Jedi, can I ask a question?
Yep.
So for the first 3 questions, A, B, and C, doesn't it get the client to reflect on their own motivations,
Mm-hmm.
why is it then still more surface?
Very,
Because
very.
yeah, it can, if you push it a little further, they might be able to get to the root of their motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay, so very good question. The first three question, although it's surface expanded, but it takes too long to get to that root of the questioning. So that's why it's still very much surface expanded, right? So you will, after asking that question, you ask a few series of questions to get to that. I'm going to show you guys how to just go straight in faster. So we're going to shorten the process a little bit more, right? This is important, especially when you don't have a lot of time with the client, or maybe perhaps you want to get more laser focused, or you want to get more precise in the questioning. Now, that doesn't mean that the first three are wrong. So remember, all this doesn't mean they're wrong. Okay, so there's no questions that are wrong or right questions, but it's about the efficaciousness of the question. How efficacious is the question in helping the client to move towards the outcome? That's the underlying premise of why we're looking at all this. Okay, so very good question. Now, before I get to there, I want to point out to you here so that you know how the flow of thought can bring you guys through. So, at the very start, the client suggests three parts: how to start losing weight. Okay, that's it. How to start losing weight. So, three parts here. Now, the great thing about this process here is it allows us to just pause and analyze the components individually so that it allows us to look at our blind spots. Okay, so some of us may be very used to asking certain questions in a certain way, and perhaps maybe now it's for us to take a look back and say, hey, are there better ways to move the client through the process? Okay, so what we're hearing here is the client wants to lose weight, and the client says, I want to lose weight because I want to get better health. Okay, so losing weight then becomes, is losing weight the ends, or losing weight, is it the means? Is losing weight the ends or losing weight the means? Anyone?
It's the means, right?
Yeah, it's a means, right? It's a means to a certain end, which is health. Now, let's ask the question: is getting better health the end?
Maybe
We
not.
don't know yet.
We don't know. We don't know. So very nice. So that's the reason why a better question for the coach to ask is to figure out what is the ends the client's trying to look for. Remember, in the first 5 minutes, our outcome is to figure out what is the ultimate goal, what's the where the client wants to be. That's the outcome, right? So the questioning should help us or help them to create the awareness of where they want to be actually. So okay, so you can say things like, oh, so I hear you, okay, or you could say, well, so you want to lose weight because you want to get better health. And what would better health get you? Okay. Now, what is the intent of this question here? So let's open the floor now. What is the intent of this question here?
What is
To get
beyond better health?
Sorry?
What is beyond better health?
Okay,
The
what is
client is looking for.
okay? Anyone else?
Is it
yeah, you're trying to
determining?
get
Sorry, is it determining which one is the process and which one is the end
Okay.
one? Yeah.
Yep. Hazelman, you were saying something?
no, I think you want to get to the core.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get to this same thing. What's the deeper reason here? What's the deeper core here? Because we know that losing weight is a means, but is health, better health, the end, or is it a means to something else? So this question allows us to dive deeper to find out what exactly is the client really looking for. I'm losing weight to get better health. Okay, so you get better health, so that okay. So one of the ways, this is how let me give you guys some tips and tricks. Tips and tricks. Okay. Do you like these tips and tricks? Since it's not October, let me give you some tips and tricks. Okay, so what? Okay, this is how I ask myself. So what? Okay, so So what if I lose weight? So what if I get better health? Okay, so that's the internal dialogue that I have within myself. So what if I lose weight? So what if I get better health? So that's a way for me to question and ask myself, okay, where's the client trying to go towards? Or what's the real intention of the client here? So now coaching and questioning is no longer subjective. Now there's a certain science and element to it, why we ask certain questions, or why is there a certain flow process to the questioning. Yeah, many coaches or many people who are teaching coaching out there, they just ask you to ask questions and just, but they have no idea why they're asking certain questions. So there's a reason why we ask the question here, because we recognize that there might be a deeper issue. Is there, or is there not a deeper issue? We do not know, but we can sense from the way the client has responded here is that there might be a deeper issue. So as such, the natural question to follow, it's this. Now, you could actually just not say this. This is an optional, but if you said this, there's a reason why I will repeat exactly what the client says at this stage. Do you know why? Why?
The mirroring to build some rapport.
Okay, there's a linguistic mirroring. Okay. What else do you think this doing that will do to the conversational process?
You're trying to confirm the what do you call that again? The coaching agreement.
Okay, you're trying to no, not yet. We have not even reached the coaching agreement yet. We're still at the surface level on the what only.
The client may look at his or her own statement, like, is it losing weight? How losing weight is connected to better health?
Okay, so it's a good reflective inquiry, right? Or a reflection into the client's world. So sometimes when we do this, it's just to reflect back to the client. So have you spoken before your brain can process? So sometimes we speak faster than what our brains can process. At a subconscious level, we may say something really really fast, and that might bypass our internal filters, and we straight away say certain things. So in this sense, when you're actually repeating the way the client phrases their words, you're actually allowing the clients to hear themselves back again. So you want to lose weight because you want to get better health. Okay, because I want to lose weight because I want to get better health. So you want to lose weight because you want to get better health. Now this gives a chance for the client to just pause and listen. Oh yeah, I think that's really what I want, right? So this is a chance for the client to listen back to themselves, back from another person's mouth, like the words that they have just spoken. But it also does another thing. This is so reflection is one, but it's another thing that you're actually doing this process.
And also we can have a non-verbal response from the client if
Okay.
it's really what he wants.
Yes, you are actually doing what we call a non-verbal calibration of the client. When you reflect back to the client, I can look at the client and see, hey, is there something off the client there? If the client starts to cringe, or the client starts to become really, really happy, or when the client starts to feel very, very confused, now I'm able to calibrate. Just a moment ago, the client said that sentence, and now when I reflect back to the client, there seemed to be a shift non-verbally, right? So now I'm actually calibrating to the client. Now calibration is part of competency number 4, which is your establishing of trust and safety. The previous competency is competency number 3, which is trust and intimacy. So establishing trust and a safe environment for the client, that's what this whole process is about. Okay, good. Anyone else? No? Okay. Is this helping you guys? Yeah. Okay. So now, actually, we've done quite a little bit into your shadow boxing process on just the first 4 statements. Okay. So you can imagine what's the beauty of shadow boxing. It's so powerful. Okay. So now that we know this, let's look at the response from the client. Okay, so let's move all the way down here. We will keep all the other contents there because it allows us to review them later on. So now that as a coach, you ask the client, you want to lose weight because you want to get better health, and what would better health get you? Now notice here, there's a reason why we say get you. Why do we say the word get you? It doesn't sound grammatically correct. It would say what would better health bring you, or what would better health do for you, not what would better health get you, right? It doesn't really sound linguistically correct. Why do we use this phrase?
Trying to get to the selfish reason.
Okay, trying to get a selfish reason. Okay, anyone else?
We're exploring the desire.
Exploring the desire. Okay, it's a very simple reason. Very simple reason.
Maybe because it sounds like the client is able to get something, so it's a drive towards
Okay,
his outcome.
okay.
Like it's an active word.
It's like an active word. Okay, it's even simpler than that.
I think because the client used the word.
Yes, because the client used the word. Because the client says, I want to get better health. So all I'm doing is just repeating the use of the client's word. Now, this does something cognitively, unconsciously. This is an example of what we call a transitive language, or sometimes we call this hypnotic languaging. Not in the sense of like using a pendulum and get people into a straight a trance, but this is an example of a transitive way of phrasing. Okay, so
Whatever the word means for the client.
yes, whatever the word means to the client, right? It may mean driving, it may mean whichever it is. So as the coach, I'm not too concerned about trying to overanalyze it, but I'm trying to see, hey, this is what the client used, right? I want to get better health. So what would better health get you? Yeah. So I'm just using this transitive language that the client has just used there. Now this is a little bit more advanced for some of us. So since you guys are in my room, I like to do a little bit more advanced stuff. Okay. So this is something now we say, hey, okay, so actually the choice of me structuring the question really makes a lot of difference. Because I can use bring you, I can use do for you, I can use a lot of different ways. But the best approach is just to use whatever the client has given me. Now, this is an example. When I'm doing this is an example of the application of the co-creative process. Okay, what do we mean by the application of co-creative process? Co-creative process means this, that I'm co-creating with the client a language pattern or a language style that makes sense to the client's will. So we want to make sure that whatever questions we ask, whatever way we structure things, it makes sense to the client's will. Because sometimes coaches, we may use overly professional language that the client cannot understand, or the way we structure it's so beautifully Shakespearean that the poor client has no idea what you talk about, right? So we want to make sure that it's relevant. So if the client does a little bit of colloquial language, for example, if the client sees this, because I just want lah, because it can law, right? So this is example of a colloquial language. Then you may decide, or you may choose whether you want to add those elements in if it helps the client. So in the process of coaching, we are also calibrating the client. What language patterns is resonating with the client? Because sometimes you realize as you ask the clients questions, especially when we use professional sounding sentences, it just seemed to be a barrier with the client. It's like, oh, why the coach ask such a professional sounding and the English is so precise, right? Oh, what would thou liketh in this thine instance? Would thou liketh to lose of weight because that would enhance thine health? Or would thou loveth to enjoy the bitter smell of the roses by the bed? So the poor client has no idea what on earth you just talked about, but the reason we do this is also to do the second reading, which is to establish a deeper rapport with the client. So transitive language is very powerful to establish subconscious rapport building with the client. So someone asked me, Jedidiah, how do we actually establish rapport with the client very quickly, or the speed of trust? The speed of trust happens when we are like the client, or we become like the client. In the process of shadow boxing, we become like the client as well. We are almost evolving ourselves to think from the client's world and to sound like the client. So the client is like listening to themselves, but they are also hearing the shifts and creating the awareness for themselves. So as the client feels that, hey, this coach seems to know me unconsciously, the client will open their floodgates to allow you to go deeper with them. So before you can ask, like for example, deeper questions like this in question number F, or question number uh, G or ABC, we want to make sure that we have a very strong rapport with the client at unconscious level, so that the client can allow us to go deeper with them. Okay, so that when we ask questions, that we probe deeper, especially when you go deeper with the client's core, there will be a lot of guards that the client may raise. Why? Because the more sensitive the topic is, the more the client might close themselves inwards. So those are little parts in the client's world. The client will not open up so easily. Okay, so good. Now that we have this, what do you think would be the client's response to you? What do you think would be the client's response to you? So you said you want to lose weight because you want to get better health, and what would better health get you? What do you think the client would, or how do you think the client would respond to you?
Better health gives me confidence, and yeah.
Better health would give me confidence. Okay, so suppose the client says this to me. Okay, and so what do you think the coach would respond?
Perhaps go one more layer.
Okay, and what would the question be?
You want to lose weight because you want better health, and you want better health because you want confidence. Sorry, and you want what? And what would confidence get you?
Okay, so you want to lose weight because you want better health. You want better health, uh, so that it gets you confidence. And what would confidence get you? Okay, so now we have an option here. So now that's a very good thing that Tapan has raised up. Do we now repeat like what we did earlier? You have an option to whether you want to repeat the same thing again or not. So how many of you would repeat again? Raise your hands, or maybe put there, yes, I'll repeat, or no, I'll just ask this question. And what would confidence get you? So you have two options. Yeah? Another option is just, what would confidence get you?
Can we ask, like, you want to lose weight to get confidence?
Okay, so Smita asks a question. This is another good question to explore. You want to lose weight to get confidence. Okay, so let's explore each one of them. How many of you would, okay, let me just put options again so it's easier. How many of you would go for option A? How many of you would go for option B? And how many of you would go for option C? Post them down below in your chat box. Okay, B, B, A, B, C, D. Okay, yep. So for me, my personal option would be option B. Why? So it doesn't sound like, oh, this coach is just trying to parrot me all the time. Yeah. So overemployment can also sound disingenuous. So that doesn't mean that A is wrong. It's an option. Okay, and overusing this option might make you sound like just parroting the client, which is something that you don't want. Okay, so there is a certain flow the client is going. So option B might be better. Now, however, if the client tells you, if you ask the client, what will confidence get you? And the client say, oh, confidence will get me happy. What will happy get you? Oh, happy will get me joy. What will joy get you? Joy will get me satisfaction. What will satisfaction get you? Oh, will give me hope. Now you see the client has so many different things. Okay, now if the client does this to you, then doing this back on the client would work, make sense. So for example, if the client repeats all this different sequence of things, okay, Mr. Client, I'm hearing a certain train of thought here. First, the losing weight will get you health, health will get you confidence, confidence will get you satisfaction, will get you hope, will get you happiness, will get you this. And ultimately, what would it do for you? Now, especially if the client just goes on and on and on, you cannot spend half an hour with the client just talking about this, we'll get this, we'll get this, right? You want to help the client to shape all the way to the end. So I would say just one or two to try to get deeper, and then that's it to move the conversation forward. Yeah. So option B will be a good question. Now, what about option C? What about option C?
I think, in my opinion, it's a bit leading.
Okay, so it does have an element of leading. Okay, and why so?
It's not a direct correlation yet.
Okay, because there isn't a clear correlation. Okay. So now, if you were to do C, what happens here? It's you have concluded for the client, or you have connected for the client. Now, this is something very dangerous. Okay. Why do we say dangerous? Because these are the building blocks of the client's world, or the cognitive process in the client's world. The way the client has perceived their world might not be that lose weight to get confidence. It might be just lose weight to get better health and confidence, but they're separate. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that it gets all the way through. Now, if we do this jump, and we do it for the client, now we might have just imposed our worldview on the client, or we might have just imposed a certain connection on the client. So I would preferably not do this at this stage here, because we're not sure. We're not spent enough time to dive deeper with the client to find out exactly what this is. And the best person to actually say this sentence is the client. So for example, you might later on, maybe in minute number 10, 15, 20, you might ask the client, hey, Mr. Client, after discovering so much, we talk about better health, we talk about losing weight, we talk about confidence. What has become clearer for you? Now, if the client concludes this, great, because now the client has created a connection for themselves. But if we create the connection for the client, the intrinsic motivation and drive will not be as strong. Remember, the alignment process is self-initiated. If it's self-initiated, it will be self-sustained. Okay, there is this entire science behind it of self-initiation and self-sustainment. If you want a client to really sustain all these things, it must be self-initiated or self-discovered. You can try this for yourself as well. For example, if someone tells you, oh, you got to lose weight, you got to lose weight, you got to lose weight, Tapan, you got to lose weight to get better health. Tapan, you want to feel healthy, you want to get stronger, you got to lose weight. But no matter what you tell Tapan, it's not going to help, because it's not from within. So last year when I met Tapan in Bali, and there was a connection that Tapan created within himself, which was self-initiated. Now, the self-initiation results in self-accountability, which results in self-actualization of the outcome. And all of a sudden, nobody asked Tapan to go and exercise. Tapan was holding himself accountable to keeping to his diet, to keeping to exercise. Why? Why is that more effective? Because the connection was created by the client and not by the coach. So that's something really important in the process. So if you want to create sustainability in the client's progress and the performance, allow the client to create a connection for themselves. Okay, so very nice. Now we have come here.
It's very interesting, Jedi, that you mentioned this. And since you pulled up my case. Actually, now I disassociated losing wealth with better health, and now I directly just want better health, whether it entails losing weight or not.
Wow, that's really powerful. So what we always think is that we think that losing weight means better health, or better health means losing weight. But in this case, you realize that the client has actually associated something else. It's two separate things, right? But by experiencing better health, subconsciously, or a byproduct of that, he begins to lose weight.
Mm.
Yeah, he doesn't lose weight to get better health. He just wants better health. But in the process of getting better health, unconsciously he loses weight. So this is really important distinction, what we call a cognitive behavioral approach. Yeah. Okay, very nice. Thanks, Tapan, for sharing that. And for some of you who want to know what we did with Tapan, 1 year ago, on this around this time, 1 year ago, before the lockdown, you can talk to him a little bit more. Okay, so now assuming that you as the coach have asked the question of A, what do you think it's a good response from the client? What do you think is a good response from the client?
To have the courage to, for example, go upfront, like like public speaking and things like that.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Courage to
To I don't know how to I don't know how to phrase it. Courage to
Courage to better face people.
yeah, yes.
Increase in self-confidence.
Yeah.
self-confidence and okay, so suppose you say that. Okay, now let's review some of this questioning here. Okay, how many of you think that this question A is good enough? How many of you think that this question is good enough? Okay, you say it's good enough. Okay, I purposely made a mistake in A to see if anybody spot that mistake.
Client says give, you get.
Ah, okay. Now we're catching it faster. Very, very good. Okay. So, and what would confidence give you? Okay. Okay, that would be the question you would ask. Now, is it wrong to ask the client what would confidence get you? Repeating
No.
whatever the client says earlier up here, right? The clients want to get better health. So,
It's not wrong, but this is a better question.
okay, this is a better question. Okay. Now, do you notice something really interesting in the client's way of phrasing? For me, I want to get better health, but better health will give me confidence. What is this telling me about the client?
The client might be facing some kind of insecurity issues.
Okay, who's it? Sharifa. Okay, client might be facing some kind of insecurity issues. Okay, how many of you agree with Sharifa's comment on this? Who agrees with this, or who has a different opinion to this? Anyone?
I feel that the use of get and give, in this case, it seems like confidence might be maybe close to the end point. Because it's not that it's not so active to have to get something, but he seems content to be given that, and that be the end point.
Okay, very very nice. So it seems that that there's a shift. So this seems like this is closer to the end than the start. Okay, that's a nice evaluation. Give seems to point towards a certain end. Okay. Okay. So very very good point. So let's look at these 2 points here. First point, client might be facing some kind of insecurity issues. How many of you agree with this statement? How many of you agree with this statement?
So really, we are using our intuition here, right?
Is this an intuition? Or is this a presupposition? Or is this a mind read?
I think it's a bit scary to jump too quick to conclusion.
Okay, so very nice. This is an example of a projection. Okay, so the coach has just projected themselves onto the client, which is actually a mind read. There is no evidence here, based on whatever the client just spoken, that the client is facing some kind of insecurity issues. There's no evidence. Maybe the client is really facing it, but based on whatever the client just spoken, there is no evidence. So this is actually a projection of your own world on the client. In the technical wordings of it, it's things like transference and counter transference that's happening in this process, right? The coach is actually experiencing that. So what happened here in the sense of Sharifa? This is what I can tell you. Do you want me to tell you about Sharifa? Sharifa, do you want me to tell you about you?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So Sharifa wants confidence in her life, more confidence, because there are areas in her life she feels there's certain insecurity. Is that a true statement?
Yep.
Now, this is an example in psychotherapy, what we call transference and countertransference. What the coach has done is that the coach has projected themselves onto the client's issue, because what the coach here, it sounds, hey, it resonates with me. It's kind of like what I feel. So maybe perhaps she's also facing some insecurity issues. This is something really really important for us to know, because we want to dissociate ourselves from the conversation here. If we associate ourselves from the conversation, we might unknowingly project ourselves onto the client, and the questioning then becomes very much, when you ask the questions for the clients, they're actually very much a reflection of you than actually helping the client. So that's a very clear distinction for coaching, so that you don't get yourself drawn into a certain conversation that might lead you to another rabbit hole that might be hard to get out of. Okay, so the client seems to shift towards discovering. Yeah, so actually let me just put here, actually get versus give, we don't know if it means anything at all. We don't know. Okay, by me asking you, is there something different now? What all of you have just done unknowingly, you have projected that there is something. Now sometimes in the coaching process, that's when we ask ourselves, hey, am I over analyzing, am I over projecting, am I overly mind reading in the process? Maybe it doesn't really mean anything. Maybe the client just uses get and give interchangeably, maybe, or maybe it could mean something deeper. We don't know. So the premise in the whole coaching process is to be curious into the way the client structure language, and the way that we ask questions, and the way that we bring the client forward in the whole process. Because maybe that means something, maybe it doesn't mean something at all. Yeah. So this could be something really, really interesting. So what if it means something? Well, then it gives us it points us a certain clue, right? So it could also mean, because very interestingly, when a client says, because I want to get better health, it means the client has not gotten. So this is a bigger hurdle. This might sound like a bigger hurdle, but once you get better health, it would definitely give me confidence. So you see, the hurdle for better health and confidence might be an easier hurdle than losing weight to better health hurdle. Maybe, we do not know. So it might be an intuition that you might face, and you can use that to facilitate the conversation as well. Okay, so good. Now let's continue the conversation. So now you have established the first few sentences here. So these few sentences here that we just mentioned up front would probably take you about 30 seconds, right? How do we know this? Good afternoon, Mr. Klein. What would you like to work on today? I would like to work on how to start losing weight. Okay, what does losing weight mean to you? Well, I want to lose weight because I want to get better health. Okay, you want to lose weight because you want to get better health. And what would better health get you? Well, better health will give me confidence. Okay, and what would confidence get you? Well, or what would confidence give you? Well, it would, give me courage to face people, increase my self-confidence. So this whole conversation would be probably less than 1 minute. So in the 1 minute conversation, we have just broken down so many different things that's happening there that we cannot see. Yeah. So all we're trying to do here is just establish what the client wants. Okay. So we have not actually narrowed down anything yet. It's still very much in the broad spectrum. Now, this is when we want to bring the conversation to help the client define in this session what they want out of this session. What do you want out of this session? Okay. So the coach could say this. Well, I hear you. And by the end of this session, what uh, what would you like to, or what would you like to get? Or what, or how would you like to feel? There are a few ways of asking this. So I could ask, I hear you. By the end of the session, how would you like to feel? Because the client just said, I want to increase in self-confidence. Or I could ask, by the end of the session, what would you like to get? Because the client started off by saying that I would like to work on how to start losing weight. Okay, so this might not be the real issue. Maybe the real issue is about confidence. I want to get a sense of better confidence. Maybe that's the issue. So we just explored a little bit on the surface, and now we get a chance to go deeper with the client as well. Okay, so I hear you. By the end of the session, what would you like to get, and how, or how would you like to feel? So the client could respond by saying this. Well, I would like to feel more confident and maybe figure some steps forward. Okay, good. So now the client says this. Let's ask this question. Is this a good enough sessional outcome? Is this a good enough sessional outcome?
Can still be defined further.
Okay. And how would you define that?
Well, you can give them a, say, from 1 to 10.
Okay,
Where
so
you
how
now?
how would you ask that?
Well, with 1 being not confident at all and 10 being very confident, where are you on that particular range?
Okay. And 10 confident. Where are you right now? Okay, so good. Let's open the floor to everyone. How many of you think that this is a good question, not a good question, or what do you think?
Okay, based on experience, I mean, as a client, I feel that sometimes it's difficult to put a number to it. So, but then again, how would you measure? You know,
Mm.
I
Okay.
mean, it's a question back lah, rather than an answer. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? What do you think of this question here?
I think Tapan wrote something in the chat
Yeah,
as well.
right. There are two
Yes.
issues with this because it's not clear to me whether what is 1 and what is 10.
Mm-hmm.
Whether 10 is highest confidence or 1 is the highest confidence. The secondly, I also don't like this question too much
Mm-hmm.
because it's giving a scale to the client.
Mm-hmm.
And the client needs to choose his own scale or perhaps no scale at all.
Mm. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, Fiona, you have some thoughts?
I think the idea is there because in order to know your outcome, we need to gauge where you are now as well. Yeah, but I'm not so sure about the scale because it's quite hard. Like some people mentioned, it's quite hard to put a number on it too.
Okay.
What if we actually put a smaller scale instead from 1 to 10, 1 to 5? I think that would be a more achievable thing.
Okay. Okay, good. So now, what I recommend all of you to do is head over to my YouTube channel and watch the video playlist on coaching agreement. Okay, I talked about this in class before about scaling. Should we do scaling or not scaling at all? This is very, very important. Okay, now, what is very, very important is that in the scaling process, it should not come from us as the coach because what is a 1, what is a 10 to us might mean a different thing to the client. And also, how the client defines the skill might not mean anything at all to them. So, for example, if the client says more confidence, maybe in their world it's not a 1 to 10. It might not be a quantitative measure. It might be a qualitative measure. For example, it might be a it might be just clouds. Maybe right now I'm feeling dark clouds. That's my low level confidence. I would like to have sunshine. That is a brighter confidence. So what the client does here now is the measure of success is both in two different forms. Okay, measures of success can be both in quantitative or qualitative. Okay, so remember this. This is really, really important. We don't offer that skill right up because it doesn't make sense at all. If I ask you now how you're feeling 1 to 10, it might not mean anything to you. It might mean something to you. It might not mean anything. The translation of a qualitative thing to a quantitative might not make sense all the time, and that's the reason why a lot of personality tests don't really make sense because a lot of personality tests ask you to scale yourself. Very like you, not very like you, super like you. How do you certain form or certain structure? It's not easily translated like that. This is an example of a translation, a feeling, a state to a numerical digit or to a quantitative or qualitative digit, right? Might not make sense. Okay, so if we are going to do a measure success, the best way is to allow for the client to give us the yardstick. The yardstick of measure should come from the client. How do we do the yardstick of measure? Okay, how do we do the yardstick of measure? So a better way of asking this question, if you want to ask the yardstick, is this. Okay, so client, Mr. Client, where are you right now in terms of your confidence? It's a very simple question like this. Where are you right now? Right. So what we're trying to do is just to elicit from the client. If the client says, I am maybe at a 2 in confidence. Okay, so let's give me I give you a few scenarios. Huh? Okay, let's use scenario A. Scenario A, the client says I'm at 2 in confidence. Now, what do you think? If the client tells you I'm at a 2 in confidence, what would your coach question follow up? How would you follow up with this?
Where would you want to be at the end of the session?
Sorry.
Where would you want to be at the end of the session?
Okay, you can see where would you want to be at the end of this session. Okay, but what does 2 in confidence tell you? What does 2 in confidence tell you?
Low,
Sorry?
very low. They're very low in their confidence level.
Very low in confidence. Okay, how many of you, what about the rest?
Depends what the scale is out of.
Okay, yes. That is very, very important because we have no idea what does 2 means. Maybe it's 2 out of 3. If it's
That's
2
right.
out of 3, it may be very good, right? We do not know. So, very low in confidence, we do not know that. We do not know what the skill is. So, very good. So, we need to understand what is the skill the client is looking at. Maybe it's a scale of 2 to 10, maybe a scale of 2 to 8, maybe a scale from 2.1 to 2.6. We do not know, right? So, we need to know that before we can make any assessment in this. So, therefore, when a client says I'm at a 2 in confidence, it doesn't tell us anything. I'm not able to know what does this mean because there's no reference point. That's why you need this one. Where would you like to be at the end of the session? So if the clients respond, it's this: I would like to be at a 6 in confidence.
But Jedi, what about that part that the coach asks with number 1 no confidence and then 10 is confident? Where are you right now? I mean, wouldn't that be giving you that skill?
No, no, no. This is not what
Or not supposed to be? Oh, okay. Okay.
you should not be asking this.
Mm.
Okay, this is not what the coach should ask. Yeah, this is what the coach should ask. Where are you right now in terms of confidence? Yeah. So now the client says 2, 6. Now, what does this tell you? So the client says I'm at 2, I would like to be at 6. What does this tell you?
Can I ask which is the difference for him in a practical way between level 6 and level 2?
Which is the difference? Okay, so which is the difference between 6 and 2 in a practical way? Okay, that's one way of asking a question. What about the rest? What do you think?
Jedi, can I just ask? Let's just say when he's already said that I am maybe at 2 in confidence, right?
Yep.
Would it be wrong if I were to ask him, would you like to elaborate more? Where exactly is that 2 coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Would
Okay.
that yeah, well, I mean, because right now, like you said, with the measuring of the scales, so when they actually say that they're at a 2 and that is in their own kind of term, so and we don't actually get that yet. So for me to actually further understand, could I just ask him, okay, what does it mean, that scale of 2 for you?
Okay, okay. So now I'm getting Sharifa's question. Sharifa is asking, should we ask the client to define what a 2 means?
Yes, exactly.
Should we ask the client to define? So how many of you would do that to define what a 2 means? Okay, so let's put here, yeah? Put here. Should we define what a 2 means? Should we do that?
I think we don't need to, because as long as it's clear to the client, then that's most important.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so actually, there's no need to define this one. Why? Because unless we have like 3 hours with the client or 4 hours with the client, you can define every single thing. But this one doesn't add any value to the forwarding the conversation. Now, remember that there are many different ways we can ask questions, right? There are many different things we can do in a conversation, but it's really whether the consideration is really whether does it help me help the client to move forward, or is it just asking more questions? So this question about what does two means, it can be a question you can ask, but it doesn't really help me to go move the client further. Yeah, it doesn't really help me to move the client further. So one of the questions then we ask is this, right? So where would you like to be at the end of this session? So now you have 2 and 6, but what's missing here? The missing part is what do you think is the missing part here? 2 and 6.
Is it the qualitative part?
No, it is the denominator. We do not know what's the scale, right? It could be 1 to 100. So 6 out of 100, that's what the client wants to be, right? But the question then becomes, do we need to know the denominator?
I suppose if you want to take the limits of the client, then it's nice to know what's the limit.
Okay.
It would give us a better gauge of exactly where they are, rather than 6 and 2 out of eternity, and we wouldn't know where they're standing at. So yeah, I think it would be a good thing to put in place.
Okay. And why is it important to know the denominator?
I think from a coach's perspective, or maybe from my perspective, at least from that scale, I would know, okay, so if 2, you're like, this is how you're feeling, and then at 6 is where you want to be, so we can work towards from 2 how to get to 6. I don't know, that's my perspective of it.
Okay, but do you need to know like is 6 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 6 out of 100? So do you need to know this denominator?
Not necessarily, I think. I mean, the client could have their own version of it, as long as we can actually catch what they're trying to say. I think that's what makes it as it is.
So actually, you don't need to know the denominator because at this point of time, there isn't a need. What we do need to know is the gap. The client is now at 2, he wants to be at 6. What is missing? So this is the question that Laurie brought up, right? So a better way to phrase this question is this. Okay, you could ask things like this, right? What is preventing you from moving to a 6 today? Or or what has been preventing you from getting to a 6? So we are basically eliciting the gap. What is actually this gap? Because the 2 and 6 actually just the idea behind that is to really help us to identify what's that gap. Is it a belief? Is it something? Is it a thought? Or what is actually holding them back? So that's the reason for this. So that's scenario A. Scenario B, it's when the client doesn't give you a quantitative approach. The client might say, I am feeling kinda hazy when it comes to my confidence. What do we mean by hazy? Now, in this case, hazy, it's actually a
Is it not knowing where they are?
hazy is actually a qualitative measure. Okay, up here it's a quantitative measure. So now you get a sense hazy, not hazel man, but hazy. Okay, so it's kind of hazy. Okay, so where would you like to be at the end of this session? Now the client says this. Well, I would like to be crystal clear. Okay, there you have quantitative, qualitative measure. Start and the end. Okay, so now there's a two. You could also have combination of quantitative and qualitative as well. So there's some examples for you to consider. Okay, good. Did this help you guys to get some clarity around this? Yeah. Okay, so what have we learned here today? We have the last remaining few seconds or 49 seconds together, right? This is something for us to consider. What we have just done here is what we call shadow boxing of coaching in just the first 5 minutes. Okay, so we've broken down all these different sequences. In fact, this is only the first minute. We've not even done the second minute yet. So can you imagine if you do this, now you begin to know, okay, what am I doing? How am I doing? What's the questioning flow like? What's the process going to be like? And that's going to be really helpful for you to build up your coaching practice and really refine your craft in coaching. One of the key attributes is competency number 2, which is on the coaching mindset, where you have an ongoing reflective practice to really enhance your skill sets.